Hey guys, welcome to Solo ReacTalk. Today I'm going to be reacting to Star Wars vs Warhammer 40K, Episode 6, The Skywatch. It's been made by AFanWithTooMuchTime. If you want to check out my previous reactions, remember the playlist card will be at the top. Just click on it and you'll be able to access them. If you want to check out the original video as well as AFanWithTooMuchTime's YouTube channel, the links are in the description below. Last week, episode 5, The Imperium Strikes, was bloody, was a nightmare. You know, Dr. Sheena barely survived. Everybody else, so far as we know, they are all KIA. They're all killed in action. Except for Gaffin, I'm not sure. Hopefully he's still alive, the apprentice Gaffin. Jedi Master Renfai, yes, he is dead. Wow, one of the Astartes who killed him, really, he had gore and blood all over him, and he had his lightsaber, so yeah, it's over for Jedi Master Renfai. But really, it's been a terrible conflict for the Star Wars universe. They lost so many vessels, so many people, and yeah, I'm just wondering what's next for them. What are they going to do in this kind of situation? But it seems like in this episode 6, we're going to be focusing on the Warhammer side of things. We're done with the Star Wars. The Star Wars had like 2 episodes dedicated to them and what they are trying to do to push back the Warhammer universe. But now we're going back to the Warhammer universe, and Chapter Master Orion and Captain what is his name again? Captain Aurelian. Yes, Captain Aurelian and Chapter Master Orion. We're going back to them. We're going back to Battlefleet Zektek, and yeah, let's just see what happens. Okay, let's start. 3, 2, 1, go.
Heralds of the coming doom, by cry of raven, we are drawn. This oath of war and vengeance, on blade of exalted iron sworn. With blood-anointed swords aloft, advance we into dread's dark shade. Punishment divine unleashed with hate, a wrathful storm of bolt and blade. Purge with plasma, fist and shell, bring cleansing fire's righteous breath. For the Emperor, Knights of Caliban, the Lion's anointed angels of death.
This is so cool.
Orion watched the steel atlas burning in space. He heard its last, desperate transmissions, sent some of his own, and discovered that they were incapable of receiving broadcasts, only transmitting them. His astropaths were likewise unable to find the minds of their kin aboard the ship. Their captain couldn't see them, didn't know how close help was to arriving. Company Captain Aurelian Tex was gritting his teeth, eyes bulging as he clutched his helmet in his hands. He was young. He had only seen a single century of combat, and it had been relatively unvaried combat at that. Mostly on the enemy's territory, mostly without having to protect Imperial citizens. And so he suffered this as a failure, watching the hololith display before them as it depicted the wrecked remains of the Universe-class mass conveyor.
You know, I just have to say that, you know, this guy, Captain Aurelian, he must be very good for him to be in the captain position. You know, he's so young. He's only been in Astartes for a very short amount of time compared to probably all the other Astartes. So yeah, he must be very special, really. Good at what he does, I guess.
It was a transport, he growled. It was carrying survivors! Discipline, Captain, the chapter master said. Do you feel nothing? Hundreds of thousands of people! Discipline, Orion repeated. This time he was heated, and the captain silenced himself. The first shred of wisdom he had shown in too long, the chapter master decided. He was talented, but wild, too swollen by victory, as his display had proven. Orion would do something about that soon, but for the moment he put such thoughts aside. For despite what Captain Tex believed, Orion did feel, and he felt a great deal. It had only taken them moments to encounter a Xenos Empire upon entering the galaxy, and they had done as aliens do, leapt upon them when they perceived them to be weak.
Yeah. You know, it's just so unfortunate that Chancellor Palpatine had to do that, really. I mean, imagine how things could have been different if Captain Kraken did not, you know, use his vessel to ram into the Atlas of Steel. Imagine, things could have been very much different. But I don't know. I don't know if the Warhammer 40K universe would, or side of things, would just, you know, accept this galaxy the way it is. I just don't know. They would be so entrenched in what they believe, especially when it comes to Xenos, Xeno races, that they should be exterminated. So I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, maybe it would have been different. I don't know.
It was disgusting. How could it be that in a universe where biological diversity and permutations should have been nearly unlimited, it was the common trend that anything smarter than a Grox always attempted to eat, enslave, or destroy mankind wherever it was found? Disgusting. His abhorrence grew into something even deeper as a bright flash in the distance signaled the death of the Atlas of Steel. The captain, manning a mortally wounded ship, and otherwise helplessly watching as his crew and charges were abducted by the Xenos raiders, had done the only courageous thing a man in his position could and should have done. He had clearly instructed his tech priests to overload the warp reactors, destroying himself and a large portion of the alien fleet. All was silent as the crew watched with steel eyes and growing convictions as the Atlas of Steel shone like a star, and then faded. Orion felt so much then. Pride in the unknown captain of that transport, in his dauntless pursuit of his duty and the safety of his crew. Sorrow for the loss of hundreds of thousands of refugees that had been in his care, who had placed their lives in his hands when he had come to evacuate their entire subsector from the gnashing maw of the Great Devourer. They had left everything behind, had watched their world.
The Great Devourer is it's the Tyranids, right? Yeah, I think it's the Tyranids. Okay.
It's burned from orbit in order to deny it from the Xenos, only to die in flame and void within this cruel new galaxy. But more than any of that, Orion felt rage kindle and spark within him, growing from the brooding fires that had sprouted before into a towering monument of his intolerance for the cruelty of the Xenos and their aberrant lives. He felt this combine with his other emotions, allowing them to stir into a storm within him, and yet he showed nothing, for he was a monument unto himself, carved by over 700 years of loss, pain, victory, death, and more than anything else,
700 years? How long do Astartes live for? 1,000, I think, right? Okay. This guy is well experienced. He's lived a very long life.
Discipline. Contact the Skyward, Orion said. All tensed, all knew the importance of that command, even if the details of what was about to transpire were beyond them. Tell them Dark Command is a go. Also, contact the escort fleet and the unassociated strike cruisers. Tell them to prepare to burn for the dead center of the enemy fleet. On our mark, said the chapter master. On our mark? Master, it almost sounds like you're going to... Captain Tex started. Prepare to charge. I want to hit them hard, fast, and once. At that, the room seemed to suddenly explode into a frenzy of actions and orders. Commands were hastily relayed by several crew members and officers, not just between the ships or to the members of the Skyward, but also across the battle barge itself. The captain seemed awed by the gesture, and it occurred to Orion that Aurelian had never once actually seen the Master of Light go into combat directly. Though the Skywatch had long been a fleet-based chapter of Space Marines, it was rare indeed that they became so cornered or driven to such desperation as to resort to calling upon a vessel as vast and potent as the battle barge they now rode within. Get below deck, Captain, Orion ordered, and Aurelian seemed nearly crestfallen by the thought that he would not be able to witness the carnage the Master of Light was about to dispense. You need to lead your men.
The Master of Light is it's a Astartes battle cruiser, right? Or strike cruiser, sorry. Right? I think that's what it is. It's a strike cruiser.
I want to capture some of these ships, and I can't do that with macro cannons. That brought a vicious smile to the captain's face, and with a salute, he snapped on his helmet and departed at pace to the lower decks to prep his company, or those who would be needed anyway. The chapter master had just given him a privilege far greater than merely observing the retribution they were about to pay to the Xenos fleet. He and his men would be a part of it. That was good for Orion as well, as it would mean that his third company and their new captain would be busy while the rest of the chapter went about securing the future of mankind from the most insidious of clutches, its own. The Skywatch were descended from the proud Ultramarines, and while they served their emperor in the farthest reaches of his empire, away even from their beloved 500 worlds, they were still studiously trained in the arts, methods, and patterns of statescraft, debate, bureaucracy, and politics. Orion had lost count of how many times he and his chapter had been forced to utterly dismantle the decaying power structure of a high world or even a whole subsector after having saved said system from the throes of heresy and treachery. But what he faced now was not a mere reorganization of an irredeemably corrupt societal structure, but rather the creation of an entirely new structure for an entirely new galaxy.
This will become Chapter Master Orion's pet project. I think he's going to be creating his own version of the sector. What is it called again? I forgot where Primarch Rubute Gilliman comes from. What's his sector's name again? I almost said Macragge, but Macragge is the homeworld. It's the capital. But I forgot the name of the sector where Macragge hails from. I'll get it. Not now, maybe later on, but I will get it.
He had not been idle in his weeks of warp travel, nor had his mind been consumed by purely martial pursuits. No, Orion had been drafting out all potential possibilities, outcomes, and likely dispositions amongst the fractious Imperial forces that now found themselves temporarily corralled under his command. Soon enough, this temporary state would end, and the disjointed parts of the Imperium...
Ultramar. Right? The Ultramar sector? No, maybe not Ultramar sector. Sorry, guys.
which he had brought with him, forged together by the emergency of the circumstance, would soon seek to separate once more, either to pursue their own goals, or simply to preserve their own power. And yet Orion knew too well that this was impossible. They were not the Imperium of man, not out here. Normally, the disjointed forces of mankind could separate and survive due to how utterly massive the Imperium which contained them was. But this was not the case in this new galaxy, and yet the nature of man would still pull them apart if nothing was done. It had been bad enough when the orders had come to abandon their defense of Calistan from the predations of the Hive fleets. There, nearly 4,000 Space Marines had gathered already, having been warned by prophecy and less scrupulous allies of the coming threat. 3 whole chapters and their mighty fleets had assembled in addition to individual squads from other, more distant Astartes forces. High Command, unusually competent, had sent many regiments from several varied systems to back them, and even the Imperial Navy of Battlefleet Zektek had been there to provide full support in both transportation and firepower.
Man, this entire fleet is really geared up for galactic conquest, you know. They were really prepared to fight against the Tyranids, and now they've been teleported here in the Star Wars universe. All of these people, all of these equipments and personnel and vessels and, you know, smaller transportation vessels, like it's an entire invasion fleet. Wow.
And yet, their Primarch father, Rabute Gilliman, had looked upon the projected losses to their combined forces, their expected earnings of their winnings, and had judged the scales overbalanced and not in their favor. So it was that Orion had to contend with the haughty demands of High Marshal Xanathane Rektan, the indiscernible considerations of the Council of Tempered Minds, as well as the abject insubordination and defiance of the Crimson Razor's chapter master, as well as virtually all Adeptus Mechanicus personnel with even a shred of legitimacy to their power. As it was, the various personalities and power structures present, which may have survived each other within the greater context of the Imperium, were now poised to become a recipe for complete disaster.
Yeah, this is something that I should also remember, that, you know, with the Warhammer 40K universe, I would say that their bureaucracy and their politics, their internal politics, is far more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's extremely complicated compared to what's going on in the Star Wars universe. In that universe, things seem to be going, you know, as it should, you know, with the Republic and the Separatists. You know, it's simple. You know who's who, you know where they stand, you know who they support and stuff like that. But when it comes to the Warhammer 40K, everybody has their own interests. They have their own representations of who they side with, you know, and you have to negotiate, you have to talk to your supposed enemies who are also still your allies. So there's a lot of meandering, political meandering, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine, you know, kind of discussions and just machinations between the various factions of the Warhammer 40K universe. And this is all the stuff that has to be done before they can decide, okay, we're going to attack, or we're going to invade this particular planet, or we're going to, you know, organize a fleet. You know, they have to be shaking a lot of hands and talking to a lot of people first before anything can come into fruition. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Chapter Master Orion deals with this situation, because he no longer has superiors that he can, you know, delegate this responsibility to, you know, to tell them, guys, please organize, you know, a proper fleet for me so I can use it to attack supposed enemies. You know, he's all out here alone with all of these people, and these people are also going to be thinking the same thing about protecting their own little base of power. So yeah, it's going to be complicated,
both for them and the men and women in their care. This was all too clear to Orion, and not just as a chapter master charged with the training, leading, and care of 1,000 of the Emperor's finest warriors, not just as an ultramarine trained and practiced in the realms of state and leadership, not just as a former veteran of the Death Watch, where cooperation among disjointed halves was the key to survival. It was clear to him as a man, an old man, who had known many others of his kind. But recipes could be altered, ingredients added, ingredients removed. And thus it came down to his command to the Skyward, the most loyal and skilled warriors from within his chapter. Orion had not been idle for the weeks in warp travel. No, not idle at all. He had been referencing the Codex Astartes, the greatest single work of any of the Primarchs, and had begun the process of adapting it into a new work, a new structure, one which might save them all and forge them together into something stronger than their constituent halves. But it would all rely on the Tempered Hands and on the Lord Admiral Rolla. If both agreed to his method, then all others would be forced into place, their dispositions and ambitions be damned.
Okay, Lord Admiral Rolla. Lord Admiral Rolla. Right.
But if he could only convince one, or worse yet, neither, he'd be lucky to split off peacefully. And that was the trick. As soon as this battle was concluded, he would need to address the situation. In fact, he was addressing it already. The gravity projectors whined with strain as the Master of Light, an ancient ship well over 10,000 years old, seemed to return to life after centuries of death-like dormancy. Despite the mastery of its technology, all aboard the ship felt the pull on the unnatural gravity which adhered to them. Even Orion, as the behemoth of a ship, launched itself like a loosed arrow through the void of space. It briefly outpaced even the escorts around it, though only briefly, as the smaller craft assembled around it, encapsulating the battle barge in a defensive formation, while others ranged even further ahead. They were like fleas around the Master of Light, being a mere average of 2 kilometers long compared to Orion's venerable battle barge, which stretched 12 kilometers long and nearly 5 kilometers high.
12 kilometers long, 5 kilometers high. Oh.
Even being as large as it was, the Master of Light was much faster than any ship that would call itself its contemporary within the assembled fleet, even the battle barges of the Tempered Hands. Orion smiled, watching as, first the Navy and then the Tempered Hands fleet themselves gave chase, unwilling, one and all, to be unmanned. Good. This would keep them occupied, keep them busy. A new enemy to fall upon, to examine, to defeat. It was as good a diversion as any he could have ever hoped for, though paid for in much more blood than he would have ever desired.
This is like some sort of Game of Thrones type of situation out here, you know? Your allies are fighting against the enemy while you are plotting things behind their back with someone else who's also your ally. Hey!
Meanwhile, the Skyward were even then executing his will, moving amongst the undefended carrier and cargo ships which held the vast majority of the survivors of the worlds they had evacuated, rich and poor, pauper and aristocrat. Some they were ordered to abduct, but most were to be slain, not obviously, but quickly, efficiently, and with as little immediate impact as possible. Their targets were pre-designated, chosen tactically by Orion himself after reviewing all of the known and possible data. His pristine, transhuman mind held all that he had ever seen and ever known at a thought's reach. And yet even then, he had deliberated greatly as to who was to go where on his list, and if they were to go on it at all. But the fact remained. He needed to be able to come before the Lord Admiral and the Council of Tempered Minds, not only from a position of strength, but with compelling offers, and the power to carry out those offers. For this to be the case, some among the Martian priesthood would need to die, and others would need to be taken. For this to become reality, many, many lords, aristocrats, bureaucrats, administrators, and governors would need to die. And not just them, but unfortunately, because of the very structures they had created, their entire bloodline as well.
This is like a reshuffling of cabinet. Ministers are being fired and new ones are being put in. However, being fired also means being killed. And not only you, but your entire family. Hey, this is crazy.
But this was ever the truth of the galaxy. Mankind needed to suffer so that mankind could survive. Orion had allotted for all the mercy he had felt he could afford, but he could never allow petty sentimentality to cloud his view of what needed to be done. As soon as this battle concluded, he would go to them, first the Lord Admiral and then the Council. And because they were here, and because he was here, they would have no way of knowing, anticipating, or suspecting what his offers would be. And that alone would be advantage enough, but it would not be his only advantage.
Like, seriously, guys, you're focusing on this important battle, and, you want to win this battle. But in the background, people are busy assassinating other people. Very important, influential people are being assassinated. Once this battle is done with the Star Wars universe, they just realize that, guys, we just lost almost half our crew. and not due to our enemies, not due to the Xeno threat, but because of our own people. We are killing each other, trying to clean house and trying to make something new. It's crazy. Man, Warhammer. Oh.
Lord Admiral Rolla straightened her uniform, a habit which made her mentally wince. She bit down on the behavior, though the Admiral could barely fault herself for her unconscious nerves. She had spent almost an hour trying to determine what was appropriate to wear for this occasion. It was silly. She was well over 200 years old, and had waged battle against void spawn and alien menaces which would have made the Primarchs themselves shiver. She was the Lord Admiral, a veteran of crusades, defenses, retreats, and victories that would wither the souls of lesser humans, and yet even she found herself woefully underprepared for the request she had received shortly after the battle.
I wonder, for someone who's 200 years old, does she have some sort of mechanical bionics that keep her alive? Is she more like the Adeptus Mechanicus priests? How they are like cyborgs in a kind of way. So I'm just wondering whether she's also like that, or is she using some sort of gene therapy that rejuvenates her cells and keep her alive like that. I don't know.
A dinner invitation from a space marine. Forgive me, Lord Admiral, but doesn't that strike you as... said the head of her naval guard, who had insisted on accompanying her to the event in question, along with 13 of his men. Unprecedented, alarming, potentially lethal? She asked, still walking straight, facing forward with steel eyes. I was going to say unusual, Lord Admiral.
I mean, just imagine an Astartes sitting at a dinner table using fork and knife. This is not going to be a dinner date. This is not a dinner date, guys. We're not having dinner here. They're just going to talk. That's it. The dinner part is just smoke screen. Yeah, I just can't see Chapter Master Orion sitting around a dinner table. I can't visualize Astartes doing that. I don't know why. Nah, I just can't do it.
She laughed humorlessly. You always were one for understatements. They said nothing else for a time as they traversed the distance between the transit station and the Rusted Trust, a sort of inn or lodge which existed somewhere in Habosis. The guards flanked them as they made their way down the wide metal avenues, boots clinking and clanking against the grates which made up the floors. Above them were not ceilings, but more grated floors, upward and downward, for hundreds of decks. And, all around them, the varied masses of the inhabitants of her flagship. Some scurried away from her and her retinue, hiding mutations or brandings which revealed them to be criminals. Others chanted prayers in their wake, rightly ascribing holy significance to the Lord Admiral of their sacred battle fleet. But most simply gawked, having never in their lives seen such high-ranking officers as the Lord Admiral and her bodyguards. Those among them with rank, the voidsmen and armsmen, saluted, bowed, or kneeled as they were passed, but they were not the majority. The rank odor of unwashed bodies, promethium, and stale air was ever present from the moment they had departed the transit station, and more, the Lord Admiral couldn't help but wonder why the chapter master of the Skywatch had asked to meet here, of all places. "So, are you planning on discussing the next battle? Where we go to next?" Alvad asked her, his voice coming not from his covered, helmed face, but from the subtle communications augmentation she had installed in the base of her neck. "No, but probably," she responded, speaking through the implant without moving her lips. "Ostensibly, this is an informal event. I even had the option to decline," she added. "Ah, then why didn't you?" he asked. She almost chortled at the very thought. "I am a Lord Admiral. He technically cannot order me to do anything without the permission of my superiors. Codex Astartes separation of powers and whatnot. He may have been in command of the retreat from Subsector Anjulan, but I don't think any of us are under any illusions when it comes to how legitimate his commands would be out here. That being said, I am not eager to earn the ire of a Space Marine chapter, the Skywatch least of all." "I guess that explains why you're wearing your uniform to an informal event. So, you took it to be a subtle order, as opposed to an actual request," Alvad said. She nodded. "But why? Like you said, he cannot order you, subtly or otherwise. What makes the Skywatch different from the Tempered Hands or even the Crimson Razors?" The Lord Admiral Rolla shook her head in near disbelief. "Captain, are you really unaware of the reputation of the Skywatch?" she asked. Alvad shook his head before responding. "Of course not. My homeworld was Yevon Secundus before the Navy. The Skywatch saved my planet from 2 insurrections and several greenskin incursions. We fly their banners in several places of honor. They are renowned, beloved, and we venerate those of us who were recruited by them during their visitations." "And that's exactly my point," Rolla snapped through the comm. "The Skywatch are control freaks. Maybe even more than their brothers back in Ultramar. They reform almost every world they quote-unquote rescue, always finding some cause or reason to uproot the existing aristocracy or nobility and replacing them with sycophants and supporters."
Yeah, well, they've learned well from their Primarch, how to organize things, how to maintain things, how to prepare for future adversities, That's why Macragge and all the other 500 worlds that the Ultramarines... is it Ultramar Segmentum? Is that the name of the sector? I think so. Yes. I'm still stuck with, trying to figure out the name of the sector where the Ultramarines come from. But yes, because the Primarch is this person who likes to organize things, who likes to take control and develop and build and create and sustain. Of course, his sons are also going to be the same. Would you say it's like that control freaks? I don't know. I'm not sure if I could actually say that, but it's just how they're programmed. Yeah, and they do a good job. I think they do a good job, the Ultramarines, in terms of planning and building and sustaining things. Yeah, unlike the other chapters, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe the Imperial Fists are quite similar, in terms of them building fortresses and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a good trait to have. You're not just a warrior, but you're also a builder and someone who plans for the future.
Alvat shrugged. I don't know, Lord Admiral. High King Anu and his line have been good for my world. The famines almost don't come anymore, and when they do, stores normally hold up. The Imperial tithe is always paid, and the civvies are busy and happy more often than not. She rolled her eyes, but didn't bother to look at him. My point, Captain, is that he might try to do the same thing here, with me even. Again, Alvat shook his head. With respect, Lord Admiral, I think you're being too hard on them. They are loyal, through and through. I wouldn't doubt it for a second.
Yes, they are loyal. But loyal to what? Loyal to who? Yes, you can say that the Ultramarines are loyal. You can say that Chapter Master Orion is loyal. But he won't necessarily be loyal to your existence. He won't be loyal to your existence. If you are in the way, rest assured he will kill you. He will kill you. For his ultimate plans to come into fruition, he will kill you. So I think that's what the Admiral is trying to say. That yes, they have all of these qualities. However, it doesn't guarantee my safety, because I might be against whatever they have in planned or have in store for the rest of the fleet. So I have to tread lightly, So maybe that's what she's trying to tell this person. Tell the security guard. Yeah, her security guard.
The Lord Admiral sighed as she stopped and looked up at the patchy plascrete sign that adorned the large, round entrance into the rusted trust. I don't doubt their loyalty either, she said as she stepped forward and pressed the door chime to herald her arrival. The door hissed and squealed as it rolled open. It's who they're loyal to and how they manifest that loyalty that makes me nervous.
Exactly. No, it can't be finished. It was just getting interesting. Come on. Oh gosh. All right.
Next time. Those heretics had claimed the Emperor was dead. They had claimed his light was vanished. And yet, what else could this be but the Emperor's own Aegis? What he saw instead of the haunted ruin of Cadia and its sister planets was interesting but unwelcomed. This confirmed his suspicions. They were no longer within the bounds of the Milky Way galaxy. He could almost feel its machine spirit stirring, waking from centuries of sleep in the hopes of doing once more what it had done so proudly before. I do not know who you are or why you are here, but Count Dooku would kill me if I... He got no further as several tendrils snapped out, surrounding the alien and enveloping him.
Okay guys, that is it with episode 6, the Skywatch, Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K, made by AFanWithTooMuchTime. Yes, Chapter Master, sorry, not Captain Aurelian, but Chapter Master Orion, he has been thinking 3 steps ahead of everybody else. He has decided that, he has to remake this ZekTech fleet. He has to remake the leadership structures, and this all happened before they even reached their destination and fought against the Star Wars universe fleet. He has already been planning about doing all of this stuff. He's already been figuring out who should be dead, who should survive, and who should be serving his interests in remaking the society within this battle fleet. So yeah, Chapter Master Orion has already sprung his plans, and it's just something that you have to expect from the Warhammer 40K universe in terms of their political dimensions and how people and their lives, no matter how important you may think you are, it doesn't matter. You can die. You can die anytime, anywhere, for any reason. You can die. So, it's just so interesting how AFanWithTooMuchTime has also dealt with that particular situation with Warhammer 40K, because that's also something that I've also realized. The internal politics of the Imperium of Man, and the slow grinding bureaucracy, how things have to be organized before there can be a full-scale attack against the Xeno race, or a full-scale attack against chaos demons or traitors. There still has to be this vast organization of material, of soldiers, of fleets, of choosing the correct generals or choosing the correct admirals, getting the chapters, the Astartes chapters, getting the proper Mechanicus of Mars personnel, all of this stuff that needs to be organized before you can have a proper battle fleet. And yeah, AFanWithTooMuchTime has gone deep into that. He's explained about all of that stuff, and and how it's also now translating to the new reality of Battlefleet ZTech. How Chapter Master Orion now has to contend with trying to remake what governs the Astartes and what governs the rest of humanity in his fleet. So yeah, it's quite interesting, really, the political machinations, and hopefully they do come out with a satisfactory result, because I don't want the ZekTech fleet to be further splintered and disorganized, and the Star Wars universe is just going to pick them off one by one. No, there must be a cohesive and strong unit that the Star Wars universe must contend with. That's what's going to make this, I think, even more entertaining. So yeah, I'll just have to hope and see and wait for the next episode to come out, which will be episode 7 of my reactions. That'll be next week, Thursday. Yeah. But guys, that's it for today. If you liked the video, remember to give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos. And remember, if you want to check out the original video as well as AFanWithTooMuchTime's YouTube channel, the links are in the description below. Okay, until next week, Thursday. Bye-bye.